Hey there. Welcome to this deep dive. Looks like you've been exploring abortion rights in the U.S., and wow, you really dove in. Articles, research, all kinds of stuff. So we're going to unpack all of that, the arguments, the legal stuff, and what it all means for women and society.
Absolutely. It is a lot, and your sources really go right to the heart of it all.
Yeah.
Pro-choice versus pro-life. Before we get into anything else, we got to make sure we're on the same page about what those even mean.
Yeah, okay.
Well, yeah.
Choice. I feel like most people kind of get the gist.
Yeah.
But what's the deeper argument? I mean, besides just like a woman's right to choose.
Right. So the core of it is bodily autonomy, the idea that we get to decide what happens to our own bodies. And that includes pregnancy. But it's not just that.
Yep.
A lot of what you picked out focuses on health and safety.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, Roe v. Wade, the Supreme Court ruling that made abortion legal across the U.S., well, that was like the framework for safe abortion.
So when Roe v. Wade got overturned, is that when all the worry about women's health really started?
Exactly. Pro-choice folks argue, if you make it harder to get a safe abortion, it doesn't mean women stop having abortions.
Right.
It just means they're more dangerous. Some of the research you've been looking at actually cites the World Health Organization. They say that almost half of all abortions worldwide every year are unsafe.
Wow.
And most of those unsafe abortions are in places where abortion is either super restricted or totally banned.
That's scary.
Yeah.
It makes you think about what actually happens to people, not
Mhm.
just what politicians are saying.
Right. And it's not even just physical health. The economic side of things is huge. One of your sources tells this story about a woman who had to carry a pregnancy even though she didn't want to. She had to drop out of college, had a really tough time financially. It took her years to recover. This is a big part of the pro-choice argument. Unplanned pregnancies can trap women in poverty. It takes away their opportunities.
So pro-choice is about way more than just the procedure itself. It's about rights, health, safety, even economic freedom.
Exactly. Now, pro-life comes at it from a whole other direction.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on our content.
They believe that life begins at conception, so the fetus has a right to life. And that has to be protected legally.
And a lot of those arguments come from like moral or religious beliefs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Many pro-life people see abortion as morally wrong, often because of religious teachings about the sanctity of life. The idea is that from the very beginning, the fetus is a human being with a right to exist. Some of the stuff you were reading even got into the philosophy of when personhood starts, which gets really complicated.
It does seem like something where people have very strong beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
So even though some of what each side says might overlap, the core values are really different.
You got it. And it gets even trickier because it's not always black and white. There can be shades of gray within each side. As we keep talking, you might find yourself thinking about the different viewpoints and where you fall on all of this.
For sure. And things have gotten even more complex in the U.S. since Roe v. Wade was overturned in 2022. Can you remind us what Roe v. Wade actually did and why overturning it was such a big deal?
Okay, so for almost 50 years, Roe v. Wade was the law. It basically said women have a right to an abortion. And that right was based on the right to privacy in the Constitution. But in 2022, the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade with the Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization decision.
So did abortion just become illegal everywhere then?
Not quite, but it was a huge change. Now each state gets to decide how to regulate abortion, which means we have tons of different laws all over the country.
So it's like the U.S. is a giant puzzle and every state has a different piece about abortion.
Exactly. And all those different pieces create a lot of confusion and fear for women.
Yeah, it's like where you live suddenly decides what healthcare you can get. That's kind of scary.
It is. And that brings us to the ripple effects that your research talks about,
Yeah.
all the consequences beyond just the legal fight. We're talking about what this means for women's health, their finances, even the global fight for reproductive rights.
Okay, let's break all that down. What about health? Some of these articles make things sound pretty bad.
They do. One big worry is the danger to women's health, especially in those states where abortion is basically banned. When women can't get safe abortions, they might try dangerous procedures or try to end the pregnancy themselves,
Right.
which can lead to serious problems, even death.
So it's like going back in time to before Roe v. Wade, when women had to risk their lives to have any control over their bodies.
It's definitely a reminder of what we stand to lose. And unfortunately, it's not the same for all women. Your sources point out how marginalized communities, women of color, they already have a harder time getting health care. And that's even worse when it comes to reproductive health care. So these restrictions hit them the hardest.
It's like a double whammy. They already face inequality in healthcare, and now their reproductive rights are being taken away too.
Right. Right. And it's not just the immediate health risks either.
Mm.
You found an article that talks about the economic consequences, and those are really alarming. Restricting abortion isn't just about abortion, it affects women's entire lives, their finances, their education, their futures.
That article was really something. It took it out of the abstract arguments and showed how these restrictions actually play out in real people's lives.
One study said that women who are denied abortions are 3 times more likely to be unemployed than women who are able to get an abortion. They're also more likely to be poor and need government assistance. This just shows how connected reproductive rights are to economic empowerment.
It's like one thing leads to another. And these sources connect this to the issue of unplanned pregnancies. It's not just about getting an abortion, it's about being able to plan your family and your life.
Exactly. One source had this quote from a woman that really stuck with me. She said, "Being able to choose when and if to have children let me finish school, build a career, and be financially independent. It wasn't just about avoiding an unplanned pregnancy, it was about having control over my own life."
That's powerful. It shows that reproductive rights are bigger than just a medical procedure. It's about a woman's right to decide her own path.
Exactly. And here's the thing. This isn't just a U.S. issue anymore. What happened with Roe v. Wade has had an impact all over the world.
I saw some of the articles you picked talked about a global impact. What's the connection?
Well, the Dock's decision has given a boost to groups that are against abortion around the world. They see it as a win, and they're using it to try and get stricter abortion laws in their own countries.
Like a ripple effect, but worldwide.
Exactly. Some of what you've been reading mentions countries like Poland, Argentina, even some African countries where anti-abortion groups are pointing to the U.S. as an example of how to roll back reproductive rights. It's a reminder that this is a global fight with a lot at stake.
And here in the U.S., it feels like the abortion debate has become even more political since Roe was overturned.
Oh, absolutely. It's a central issue in elections now. Groups on both sides are trying to get people to vote and lobbying politicians. You even highlighted a stat that really stood out to me. In the 2024 election, abortion was the most important issue for almost 30% of Black women voters. That's a huge voting bloc. It shows how much this issue matters to certain groups and how it's changing politics.
It's not a side issue anymore. It's right at the center of American politics.
Right.
And with Trump back in office, it makes you wonder what's going to happen next.
It does. And your sources actually talk about some possible scenarios. One thing is more changes to state constitutions. We're seeing states like California and New York trying to make sure abortion rights are protected in their constitutions, but other states are trying to do the opposite and completely ban abortion.
So the fight's not over.
Nope, not even close. The courts are going to keep being a battleground with each side fighting over state laws and trying to shape the legal system to support their side.
What about at the federal level? Could there be like a national ban on abortion?
It could happen. With Trump back in office and a more conservative Supreme Court pro-choice, people are worried that federal restrictions could be coming.
Oh, wow. It's a lot to take in. It feels like we're at a real turning point. When you were looking through all this, what stood out to you about the future of abortion access?
You know, one thing that was really interesting is the rise of different ways to get an abortion. As clinics close and laws get stricter, women are finding new ways to manage their reproductive health.
You mean like medical abortion and doing it yourself?
Exactly. Medical abortion, which is using pills to end a pregnancy, is becoming more common, especially where there aren't many clinics. And then there's this growing conversation about self-managed abortion where women get pills online or through other ways without going to a doctor.
So even when it gets harder to get a traditional abortion, women are figuring out how to adapt and make their own choices. It shows how resilient and determined they are.
It really does. And it shows how this whole debate is changing. Things are always in flux, and there are new challenges and opportunities popping up all the time. It really highlights how this debate is about way more than just laws. You know, it's about how people are actually living their lives.
Exactly. And when we look ahead, it feels like things are even more uncertain now. All this research paints some pretty different pictures of what could happen.
It does. And a lot hinges on what happens at the state level. Some states are digging in their heels on both sides.
Right. Like we were saying, some states want to guarantee abortion rights in their constitutions, while others want to ban it completely.
And that means the courts are going to be busy. We're likely to see a ton of lawsuits as each side tries to challenge the laws they don't like.
Makes you wonder if we'll end up back at the Supreme Court again.
It's definitely possible. And then there's the whole question of federal action. Could a national ban on abortion actually happen?
It feels like with Trump back in office, that's a real possibility.
It's definitely a concern for pro-choice advocates, especially with the Supreme Court being more conservative now.
It's almost like we're holding our breath to see what happens next.
In a way, we are. But amidst all this uncertainty, there's also been a surge in creativity and resilience.
Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date on our content.
Oh, how so?
Well, think about it. As traditional abortion services become harder to access, people are finding new ways to get the care they need.
Like those alternative methods we were talking about.
Yeah.
Medical abortion and self-managed abortion.
Exactly. They're becoming increasingly important, especially in places where clinics are shutting down.
It almost feels like a tech revolution happening in this space.
In some ways, it is telemedicine, online resources, even the use of social media to share information and support. It's all changing how people access and think about reproductive health care.
It's a reminder that even in the face of huge challenges, people find ways to adapt and take control. It's pretty inspiring when you think about it.
It really is. And it speaks to a broader point that I think comes through in all of your research. This debate is constantly evolving.
Oh, so?
Well, it's not just about legal arguments anymore. It's about technology, access, information sharing. And ultimately, it's about the fundamental right to make decisions about our own bodies and our own lives.
It's about recognizing that people's needs and circumstances are diverse, and the solutions have to be diverse too.
Exactly. And that's why this conversation is so important. It's about moving beyond the slogans and really grappling with the complexities of this issue, understanding the nuances of each perspective and the very real impact these policies have on people's lives.
I think that's what makes this deep dive so valuable. It's not about taking sides. It's about equipping ourselves with the knowledge and understanding to engage in this conversation in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. And I think your sources have done a fantastic job of laying out the landscape, giving us the historical context, the legal battles, and the human stories that drive this debate.
So as we wrap up, is there one final thought you'd like to leave our listener with? Something to ponder that goes beyond the specific sources we've explored, but builds on what we've learned together?
You know, given the global implications we've talked about, I think it's worth asking ourselves, what role do people outside the U.S. have in this conversation? Even though Roe v. Wade was an American law, what happened here has sparked debate and action all over the world.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel like this is just an American issue.
But it's bigger than that. It's a global conversation about human rights, about bodily autonomy, about who gets to make decisions about our own bodies and our own futures. So I think the question for all of us, regardless of where we live, is what can we do to ensure that everyone, everywhere, has access to safe and legal reproductive health care? It's a complex question with no easy answers, but it's one worth wrestling with.
That's a powerful question to leave us with. It reminds us that this isn't just a legal or political issue. It's a deeply human one that deserves our attention and our action. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you've gained a deeper understanding of the complexities of abortion rights, both here in the U.S. and around the world. Remember, this conversation doesn't end here. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep engaging with this crucial issue. Until next time, take care.
It really is. And you know what's striking to me? It feels like this whole debate is shifting.
Oh.
In what way? Well, we used to talk about it as this kind of abstract legal thing, right? But now it's so much more than that. It's about access. It's about technology. It's about information.
Right. Like we were just saying with medical abortion and self-managed abortion, it's almost like tech is changing the whole conversation.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so fascinating. We're not just talking about laws anymore. We're talking about people's lives, their choices, their ability to control their own bodies and their futures.
I think that's what makes this deep dive so powerful. It's not about picking a side or saying who's right or wrong. It's about understanding the nuances.
Exactly. And your sources, they really highlight those nuances. They give us the historical context. They lay out the legal arguments, but they also don't shy away from the real-world impact all of this has on people's lives.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, is there anything else you want to leave our listener with? Something to think about that goes beyond what we've already covered.
You know, given how global this conversation has become, I think it's worth asking ourselves, what role do people outside the U.S. have in all of this? I mean, Roe v. Wade was an American law, but the impact, the debate, it's happening everywhere.
It's true. It's easy to think of this as just an American issue.
But it's so much bigger than that. It's about human rights. It's about bodily autonomy. It's about who gets to decide what happens to our bodies and our futures. So the question for everyone, no matter where they live, is, what can we do to make sure everyone has access to safe reproductive health care? It's not an easy question, but it's one we all need to think about.
That's a powerful question to end on. It reminds us that this isn't just a political debate or a legal battle. It's about real people and their lives. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of abortion rights. We hope this conversation has given you a new perspective and maybe even sparked some new questions. Remember, this is just the beginning. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep engaging with this important issue. Until next time.